Wonderful. Well, we already heard earlier the Zechariah passage from Zechariah 9:9 about the prophecy of Jesus entering Jerusalem on a donkey. And that's what I want to talk about this evening briefly. I know on Sunday was Palm Sunday, but nevertheless, we're thinking about Easter and Holy Week and how Jesus entered into Jerusalem was quite remarkable. And we think of the story, and I'm going to read it to you from a passage, Mark chapter 11, verse 1 to 11. I'm going to share that with you now. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethpage and Bethany on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and just as you enter it, you'll find a colt, donkey, tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you doing this?' say, 'The Lord needs it. We'll send it back here shortly.'" They went and found a colt outside in the street, tied at a doorway. As they untied it, some people standing there said, "What are you doing untying that colt?" They answered as Jesus had told them to, and the people let them go. When they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks over it, he sat on it. Many people spread their cloaks on the road, while others spread branches they had cut in the fields. Those who went ahead and those who followed shouted, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest." Jesus entered Jerusalem and went into the temple courts. He looked around at everything, but since he was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. A familiar story, but there's a lot of meaning in the way that Jesus entered into Jerusalem. It was the next time he enters into Jerusalem, by the way, he won't be riding a donkey. He'll be riding a great white horse with all the angels and saints with him. And so it's going to be very, very different, very, very different when he enters Jerusalem next time. Now, one of the main things, and we heard someone mention earlier about the prophecy fulfilled in this, which is found in Zechariah 9:9. "Rejoice greatly, daughter of Zion. Shout, daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, humble or lowly, and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." Now, this riding of a donkey has very powerful significance. Jesus chose to ride in a donkey, and in the olden days, kings and significant people would often ride donkeys. But the donkey as a symbol of power and authority. And unlike a horse, a donkey symbolizes peace. A horse symbolizes triumph and war, whereas a donkey symbolizes peace and stands for humility. So Jesus chose to ride that donkey as a fulfillment. Behold, your king is coming to you triumphantly, victoriously. Rejoice, shout, but he's humble, riding on a donkey. So you'd have thought that Jesus would have rode in a horse if he was a conquering king, which he was. But of course, his kingdom was not of this world. And the Son of Man came to serve, not to be served. He turned things on its head. Power was there to serve. And so in riding this donkey, he chose it not only to fulfill that prophecy, to show that he was the king, the Messiah, but because of everything that donkey symbolized: peace, humility, and servitude. Remember, a donkey was a donkey was a donkey of burden. I always remember, well, when I say I always remember, I remember watching a documentary on the war in Burma when the British were going in to try and get it back from the Japanese. And the only way they could carry things were donkeys. And I was absolutely astonished at how many donkeys were used, and also the sort of load-bearing weight a donkey could take. It, they would be packed with these weights. And I just thought, how could they carry those things and survive? And so a donkey was a beast of burden. It was also a poor man's transport. You didn't get poor people riding horses. That was reserved for far greater people. But poor people, if they had any transport, it would be a donkey. We always think of the little donkey that carried Mary to Nazareth. And so Jesus was relating to not the ruling class, but ordinary people. He rode in celebration. People were rejoicing. They had their palms with them. They were throwing their coats on the floor. I mean, it really was a triumphant entrance, but the means in which he entered would have really spoke to a lot of people. Why isn't he riding a horse? Oh, he's riding a donkey. And those that knew their scripture would say, hey, maybe this is Zechariah. Maybe this is Zechariah's prophecy being fulfilled, which of course it was. Now, we use a phrase, well, some of us use a phrase about people that are proud and full of pride. And we say, just get off your high horse, won't you? So this idea of getting off your high horse, being haughty or superior. And so Jesus is here riding on a humble donkey. Now, it might be interesting for you to know, actually, just in passing, and you can find out more about it if you want to by Googling it. But there was a general in the First World War called Allenby, General Allenby, and he would become very significant in the battle in the Middle East. He would also be very significant because he was one of the people that signed that arranged and signed the Balfour Declaration that would be the beginnings of the return of the Jews to their own state. So this man, Allenby, this great general, was a very strong Bible-believing Christian. And he'd actually, as a Bible-believing Christian, been taught about Israel, God's people, and the promises of the chosen land. And so he would be very instrumental in the Balfour Declaration and bringing Israel back. And you say, well, why that? Well, because it's interesting how he entered Jerusalem, because he took Jerusalem back in 1917, and he relieved it, he liberated it, if you like. And so he was coming in, as the generals do, into places they've liberated or conquered, and they usually ride in their cars in a procession or on their horses. But Allenby, aware of Jesus riding into Jerusalem triumphant on a donkey, refused, well, he was a general, he could do what he wants, but refused to go on his horse or in a car. And in fact, when he got to the entrance of Jerusalem, he dismounted and walked into Jerusalem. And here's just a little picture there. I hope you can see it. There he is walking in Jerusalem. You can see somebody there's on a horse. He's got his riding boots, his riding crop with him, but he had dismounted to walk into Jerusalem, and that was because he was a Christian, and because there was no way this Christian man was going to ride into Jerusalem triumphant on a horse when his Lord rode in on a donkey. Neither was he going to ride in on a donkey. He was going to get off and he was going to walk in. So there he is, Allenby, the Christian, getting off his high horse, not even going in a donkey, but walking in. So significant did the story of Jesus on the donkey entering in triumph to him. And I think that picture tells us a lot about how we should be, that we should ensure that we never get on our high horse. And sometimes I know it's easy to, but we have to, sometimes we just got to get off the horse and ride the donkey. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it can be just people have just really riled us up and got us annoyed. And it's easy at those times to sort of like get proud, puffed up, or wanting to cut these people down a size. Don't they know who I am? We might not say that, but there's a certain sense in the way we treat people. It could be somebody who's a little bit rude to you in the shops, I guess. Don't they know who I am? I'm a customer. It could be any of these things. Don't they know who I am? How dare they speak to me like this? Don't they? I have my rights. Whereas Jesus had the right to go in on a high horse, but he chose to go in a donkey. It's also, for me, a beautiful picture of handling victory and success if it comes our way. Because one of the greatest challenges in the Christian life can be success in whatever form it comes. Because when you're successful, you can begin to think like the Israelites did and were warned in Deuteronomy 8 that when they took the land and they had great houses and wonderful agriculture, not to get proud and say, my own hands have done this. Whereas, of course, when they were in more difficult times in the wilderness, their daily bread literally came from the Lord, their water from the rock, which was Christ, that there was no scope for them to get on their high horse in the sense of thinking that they were more important than they were. And so they were warned in Deuteronomy 8 about the dangers of victory and the dangers of success. And we see this in life. You just have to read the newspapers, watch the media, and we see the rise and fall of people, don't we? The rise and fall of politicians, the rise and fall of popular media people. And often their fall is of their own making. They didn't get off their high horse. They fell off their high horse, or someone pushed them off their high horse who wanted to be on it instead of them and were jealous. And so when victory comes, when success comes, when we're victorious, are we riding on a donkey, or are we beginning to ride on a horse? When we're preferred or promoted to others, when we have giftings that are, the giftings are more powerful than the giftings of those around us. We have giftings that God has given us, and our giftings have made room for us, and our intellect or our athletic prowess or whatever it might be is superior than others around us. Are we willing to ride amongst them in a donkey with our success and our great abilities? Or do we think we're a better class of people than they are, even unconsciously? So this riding in a donkey says so much. It's a messianic fulfillment. It's Jesus is relating to the common people. It's him coming in peace. Peace is on a donkey. Don't ride into battle in a donkey. And also, it's how he handles I suppose the moment of great triumph and success. I mean, it's called the triumphant entrance, isn't it? But it didn't last long. And Jesus knew it wouldn't last long. He knew where he was going by the end of that week. But in that triumph, he was on his donkey. And I think that in our triumphs and successes and abilities, when we shine, and maybe shine brighter than others, we should always make sure we're riding on a donkey, as it were, rather than a high horse. Well, those are my thoughts for tonight, Francesca. Thank you very much.